The monk who remembered the stars before time, before the first breath of the world. There was silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but of waiting, like the pause before a bell tolls across a mountain range. In the high winds of the Himalayas, where the clouds kiss the peaks and the air thins into spirit, there lived a man who claimed to remember what no human should, the stars before time began. His name was Tenzin Dorje, a humble monk cloaked in saffron robes, whose days were spent in the quiet rhythm of prayer wheels, incense smoke, and stone-cold silence. Yet, behind those closed eyes was not stillness, but galaxies, collapsing and birthing within him. They called him mad, or blessed, because each night, in the flicker between waking and sleep, Tenzin drifted into a space beyond death, beyond life, into the bardo. There, he said, beings of light with eyes like stars and hands like memory guided him through worlds forgotten. They whispered not in words, but in vibrations, weaving echoes of a cycle before Earth's own, a time when the soul knew it was the cosmos itself. He was not inventing these things. He was remembering them. Long before Einstein bent time or physicists cracked the atom, this solitary monk spoke of quantum voids, fractured selves, and timeless awareness. But he used different language. Softer language. The language of silence, and sky, and soundless bells. So the question is not, was he right? The question is, how could he know? Tonight, we follow his footprints into the mist, to a place between heartbeats, between lifetimes, where a forgotten truth still waits to be heard. And you're already halfway there. The bardo and the beings of light. It began, as many things do, in the quiet. Tenzin Dorje was only 23 when the veil first parted. He had been fasting in a cave above the sky lake of Namtso, where the air is so thin it seems the mountain is inhaling you. He had gone there seeking stillness, but stillness was not what he found. On the 5th night, with no food and only glacial water to sustain him, something changed. His body fell into a trance, though he remained conscious. The cave disappeared. His breath slowed to nothing. And then, it was as if his mind cracked open like a seed touched by the first rain. He was floating. Above him, stars spun in sacred geometry, not in the sky, but through him, and from their centers came beings. Not gods, not men, something else. They did not speak, but he knew them. Their forms were radiant, fluid, shaped more by thought than by flesh. Each one shimmered like a memory remembered in reverse. They reached for him, not with hands but frequencies, not commands, but invitations. And just like that, he was elsewhere. A corridor, not of stone nor dream, but of in-between. The bardo. In Tibetan tradition, the bardo is the liminal realm between death and rebirth, a place of testing, of reflection, of cosmic mirrors. But this bardo was vast, deeper than the scriptures described. Not a purgatory, but a crossing place, a junction of souls and stars. Here, time unfolded like a lotus. Past lives flickered before him, not as memories, but as selves. All of them him, but none of them now. A shepherd, a warrior, a dying child, a woman screaming in labor, a wanderer who watched the stars fall into the sea. And then came a voice, not spoken, but resonated. You have done this before. You are remembering, not dreaming. It was not comfort. It was recognition. He returned to his body with tears that didn't belong to this life. For weeks, he could not speak, only write. Symbols, constellations, words in languages he had never learned. He drew spirals within spirals, human forms turning into flame. He spoke of the first forgetting, when consciousness chose form over light, when the soul descended from a higher realm into the cycle of matter and illusion. He told the elder monks, and they wept, not from fear, but from something older, because deep down, they too had dreamed of stars that spoke, but they had forgotten. And now, Tenzin had not. Discovery by Tenzin Dorje. Before he was a monk. Before the visions. Tenzin Dorje was a child with no name, born into silence. He came into the world during the winter of a lunar eclipse, in a remote valley carved between the bones of the Himalayas. His mother died in childbirth. His father disappeared in the spring floods. The villagers believed the boy was touched by something, not cursed but set apart. He hardly cried. He would stare for hours at the stars without blinking, as if trying to remember something lost in the light. They gave him to the monastery at 5 years old. There, under the flicker of yak butter lamps and the murmured chants of old monks, Tenzin grew. But not like the others. He was bright, but quiet, distant, but kind. While the other boys ran through prayer halls and studied the scriptures, Tenzin would sit for hours by the temple wall, tracing spirals into the dust with his fingers. He once told a teacher, "I don't want to learn the teachings. I want to remember them." The old Lama just smiled. But he watched Tenzin closely after that. By 15, he was dreaming in symbols, circles of fire, beings of light, a golden river flowing backward through space. When he described these to the elders, they assumed it was imagination, or karma, or echoes of past lives. But the dreams kept coming. At 17, he began drawing star maps that didn't match the sky. Not our sky. He spoke of a second sun that once burned over a forgotten earth, of a time when souls did not need bodies, of a rhythm, a pulse, in the universe that had once been felt by every being, but had been forgotten, like a melody lost in noise. And he cried, because he missed it. The old Lama, who had once watched him closely, finally took him aside. They went into the mountains, into a cave where an ancient yogi was said to have meditated for 70 years. And there, in the thin air and freezing winds, Tenzin was told to fast, to wait, to listen. "What you see is not madness," the Lama whispered, "but memory. You were born open. Most are not. That is your burden." So Tenzin went into the cave, barefoot and alone, with only a blanket and a prayer. And in that darkness, the visions came not as dreams, but as returnings. He saw himself floating through the birth of stars, saw Earth rise not once, but many times, in many forms. He remembered the bardo not as a myth, but as a hallway he had walked 1,000 times. And above all, he remembered the others, the watchers, the whisperers, the luminous ones who guided souls before this world was born. And he knew he had come here to speak of them, to leave a trace, to remind us that we, too, had once remembered. What Tenzin Dorje discovered in the silence between worlds. Not all truths arrive with lightning. Some come like a feather settling on stone, silent, soft, and impossible to ignore. When Tenzin emerged from the mountain cave, his body was thin and trembling, but his eyes, they were different. Not wild, but vast, as if something older than the world had taken root behind them. He said little at first, only this: "We are not from here. We are of here, but not from here." The monks asked him to explain. He did not. Instead, he began to write, hundreds of pages over the course of months. Strange diagrams, spinning geometries, stories that began with, "before the beginning." And at the heart of it all, a single, whispered idea, that the bardo, the space between death and rebirth, was not a passage. It was a mirror. In it, he said, you did not just review your life. You remembered what you truly are, a fragment of the cosmos, a dream of light wrapped in form. He spoke of star beings not as gods, but as caretakers, watchers of soul cycles, guides from a previous age of Earth, long erased. Not aliens, not angels, something in between. They were once like us, he said, but they remembered, and we forgot. And Earth, this planet, one version of many, one turn of the wheel, a stage for remembering, wrapped in the illusion of separation. He described it this way: consciousness once moved freely, like wind between trees, but now it wears bodies like masks, heavy masks, and we forgot the stars we came from. He even drew parallels between sound and form, how the universe itself is shaped by vibration, a teaching that modern physicists are only now echoing in string theory. He described time as a circle, not a line, that each life is not a step forward, but a resonance in a chord we are all playing. The elders were divided. Some said he was touched by the divine, others whispered of madness. But the people, the villagers, came to him quietly, because he remembered what their hearts longed to believe, that death was not the end, that we are not trapped, but dreaming, and that somewhere, beneath all the forgetting, we are luminous. He taught that the deepest secret was not about the stars or the bardo, but about the self, that the self is not who you are, but what you've always been, a note in a cosmic song, a breath between eternities, and remembering that could change everything. How to live as one who remembers. It's easy to call it a myth. Star beings, ancient cycles, echoes of forgotten Earths. But what if the truth wasn't in the story? It was in the feeling. Tenzin Dorje never asked people to believe him. He asked them to listen, not to his words, but to the stillness between them. He would sit with a farmer, a child, a dying man, and just breathe, softly, silently, as if waiting for something. This is the first doorway, he'd say. The remembering begins not in thought, but in presence. Tenzin taught that the veil between worlds was paper-thin, not pierced by rituals, but by attention. The way you place your hand on a teacup, the way you watch the wind stir the leaves, the way you feel a memory rise for no reason, and realize it may not be yours at all. He called this practice threading the song, because he believed we were each part of a music, forgotten only because we've grown deaf in the noise of thinking. And so, he offered something simple: sit, breathe, and ask one question from the quiet of your chest. What did I forget when I was born? No answer may come. That's not the point. The act of asking, gently, repeatedly, like ringing a soft bell, begins to uncoil something ancient inside you, and with time, the world shifts. The stars feel closer. The eyes of strangers feel familiar. Synchronicities rise like birds startled into flight, and the fear of death softens, not because you understand everything, but because you feel the great rhythm beneath it all. Tenzin's real teaching was never about other worlds. It was this: you are more than your name, your past, your body. You are memory wearing skin. You are the sky pretending to be a cup of water. And when you remember, even for a moment, the world begins to sing again. No dogma, No secret code, just a turning inward, a willingness to feel what is already within you, a remembering that you too once floated through the stars, and you still carry their light. The breath between stars. Years passed. Tenzin Dorje faded like mist at dawn. No grand temple, no scriptures etched in stone, just a few pages left behind, a few stories whispered across valleys. And those who met him, they never quite forgot his eyes, not because they were strange, but because they felt like home. He never claimed to be a prophet, never claimed to know, but he remembered, and maybe that was enough. Some say he vanished into the mountains one day, following a light no one else could see. Others say he died quietly beside a river, smiling at the sky. But the real mystery was never about his ending. It was about ours. Because once you hear his story, something stirs. A quiet ache. A longing for something just beyond the veil of the ordinary. And maybe tonight, when the world is quiet, you'll pause and feel it too. That hum beneath your ribs. That memory you can't quite name. The stars that feel closer than they should. You are not lost, he once whispered to a weeping boy. You are only dreaming, and soon, you will remember. So what if it's true? What if the self isn't just a body, a mind, or a story, but a song trying to find its way home? And what if the breath you take now, this one, is the same breath that moved through Tenzin's chest 1,000 years ago? What if remembering isn't something you do, but something you allow? Maybe the next time you look at the stars, don't wonder what's out there. Ask instead, what's waiting to wake up in me? Then close your eyes and listen, not for answers, but for the sound of your own soul returning to itself.